Welcome back. Think back to our Unit 1 essential question. How do journeys change us? Now, this week's essential question takes our thinking a bit further as we think about the question, what inspires people to start a journey? Let's take a deeper look into our content for the week. As we read this week, I want you to keep this week 4 question in mind. So, what exactly makes a poem a poem? We're going to be exploring this question today. First, I want you to think about some of your favorite songs. Besides the bass, melody, and the tunes, what about the lyrics you hear when you sing or chant along? Think about it. Now, think about how those songs or lyrics make you feel. Poetry works in much the same way. In fact, many argue that lyrical songs are poems. In poetry, the use of sound devices, such as rhyme and rhythm, and figurative language, such as similes and metaphors, express ideas and emotions differently than other genres do. Let's take a closer look at some of the elements of poetry. Let's read this poem together. From Florida's fountains to Washington's mountains, with paddle and saddle, adventurers team. They hike and they bike and they follow the footsteps of hundreds of forebears across field and stream. Each glistening sliver of light in the river dissolves in the ripples like stars at daybreak. We push past the hush, forested shorelines, and murmur our thanks for the journeys we take. So let's look at our first element of poetry, sound devices. And the first sound device we're going to take a look at is end rhyme. End rhyme are just basically rhyming words at the end of 2 or more lines of poetry. An end rhyme, for example, if I have a poem that says, a birdie with a yellow bill hopped upon my windowsill, I can see that the last words in each of those lines rhyme. Bill and sill. And I can see the same thing within the stanzas of our poem that we just read. Team, stream, daybreak, take, they all rhyme. And they're the last word in the last line of each stanza. Another sound device is internal rhyme. And these are rhymes that are inside a line of poetry. For example, my home's in Montana, I wear a bandana. Or seldom is heard a discouraging word. So instead of being at the end of a stanza, these are inside the same line, and they rhyme. Looking at our poem, we can see several examples. We have fountains and mountains, paddle and saddle, hike and bike. We have sliver and river. We have hush and lush. Our next sound device, but is also a piece of figurative language, is onomatopoeia. This is one of my favorite words in the English language because it sounds so silly. And we'll say it really slowly together. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. Now, onomatopoeia are just words that imitate sounds. Or another way to say it is words that sound like what they mean. Okay? So, for example, we have bang, pop, whirring, hissing, zipping, hush. Those are all examples of onomatopoeia. And we can see some examples in the poem we just read. We have glistening, dissolves. I mean, the word dissolves sounds like it's melting away as you read it. Dissolves. All right, ripples. And murmur. Murmur. We murmur our thanks for the journeys we take. Murmur is just like a way to say that you said something softly and lightly. Murmur. And it kind of sounds like that too. Our next piece of our next element of poetry is figurative language. All right, and an example of figurative language is with a simile. All right, and a simile is a comparison of two or more unlike things that use the words like or as. And I have an example right here. It's the title of the book. It says, "My dog is as smelly as socks." And we're just comparing dog. We're comparing a dog to dirty socks and how they smell very similar. We're not saying the dog is smelly socks. We're just saying they smell like each other. And there's an example in our poem. Instead of using the word as to compare to unlike things, we're using the word like. So it dissolves in the ripples like stars at daybreak. All right. So they're saying the light, all right, dissolves like stars do at daybreak. Okay. Comparing two unlike things using like or as. So right now I want you to pause and reflect. In your digital journal, I want you to answer this question. How is poetry different from prose? If you don't know what prose is, basically prose is any form of literature that is not poetry. All right, so it can be novels, informational texts, magazines, comics, etc. These are all examples of prose. And I just want you to write down in your journal, explain to me in your own words, how is poetry different from prose? Go ahead and pause this video now and come back.